The water is at your knees. It wasn't gradual, it was sudden. 20 minutes ago, it was at your ankles, and you thought it might be some ordinary leak. 5 minutes ago, it was at your shins, and you were still waiting for someone to come open the gate. Now it's at your knees, and the gate is still closed, and you finally understand that no one is coming. You are on E-deck of the Titanic. It's the early morning of April 15th, 1912. It's approximately 2 in the morning. The ship began sinking around 12:40. You've already lost more than an hour. You didn't lose it running. You lost it waiting. Waiting for someone to tell you what to do. Waiting for someone to open the stairwells. Waiting for someone with enough authority to make a decision about you. Third class. That is the detail that defines everything that is about to happen in the next 45 minutes. Not your name. Not your story. Not where you came from, and you came from far away. Because third class was the deck of people changing their lives, leaving Ireland, Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, Lebanon, Syria, heading toward America. You came with a trunk, with savings, with an address belonging to some relative in some American city who promised things would work out. Not your name. Your ticket number is what matters in this hierarchy. And the third-class ticket number puts you at the bottom of the ship. Continent's structure was designed to separate classes with the same efficiency with which Edwardian society separated them on land. First class occupied the upper decks. The lifeboats were on the boat deck, 6 floors above you. Second class had access to stairways connecting to the upper deck. Third class had gates, iron gates with locks. Gates that existed to prevent economy passengers from going up and disturbing the higher classes during normal moments of the voyage. During a normal moment of the voyage, those gates were a matter of decorum. At 2 in the morning on April 15th, they were a death sentence. The water at your knees has a temperature. You feel it completely. The North Atlantic in April sits around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, below the freezing point of fresh water. Salt water, with its salinity, remains liquid below 32 degrees. But for your body, the difference is irrelevant. At 28 degrees, hypothermia begins setting in within minutes. The muscles in your legs begin losing coordination. Not dramatically, subtly, and progressively. You think it's your nerves. It isn't. It's the temperature-stealing function. Around you, there are people. Lots of people. Third class on the Titanic carried 709 passengers, more than first and second class combined. The corridors of E-deck were narrow, designed for passage, not for panicking crowds. Now they're packed. People with children in their arms. People with trunks they haven't let go of because they haven't fully understood what's happening. People in nightgowns who got out of bed when they felt the impact and never went back for anything. The impact happened at 11:40 at night. Most third-class passengers were sleeping. Cabins of 4 to 8 people, stacked bunks, thin mattresses. The drone of the engines that had become background noise after 4 days at sea. Crit! You woke up from the sound. Not an explosion, not what you'd imagine. A grinding, a different vibration, a scraping sound like something enormous had been dragged along the hull. The engines stopped. That's what scared you most. Not the sound, but the silence after. For days with that constant drone and suddenly nothing, the silence of the stopped engines was more ominous than any noise could have been. In the first 20 minutes, instructions were confused or non-existent. Third-class crew members received orders to bring passengers up, but the routes up were blocked by the standard gates. Some crew members opened them, others didn't. There was no unified protocol. There was no one with authority and a complete picture of the situation ordering a systematic evacuation of third class. In first class, stewards went cabin to cabin, knocking on doors, informing passengers, guiding them to the lifeboats. In third class, you woke up, felt something was wrong, stepped into the corridor, and found others exactly like you without information, without direction, with water beginning to appear on the lower floors. At your knees now, the water rose while you were thinking. That happens when you don't have a time reference. Water doesn't announce that it's risen. It simply is higher when you look again. The gate in front of you is iron, vertical bars with enough space to see through, not enough to pass through. The latch is on the other side. You've already tried. The people beside you have already tried. A man larger than you threw his full body weight against the bars twice. The bars didn't give the gate was designed to hold. It held. Survivors from third class who managed to escape, and there were few described different routes. Some followed crew members who eventually opened gates. Kosum found emergency stairwells that weren't blocked because they weren't on the normal circulation route. Some climbed through maintenance hatches they discovered exploring the ship in the first days of the voyage. Some simply swam through already flooded corridors and found exits in the dark. The final statistics are merciless. Of 709 third-class passengers, 174 survived. 24% in first class, the survival rate was 62%. In second class, 42%. The difference between surviving and not surviving the Titanic was, in large part, the number on the boarding ticket. The water is now at your waist. In under 5 minutes, it moved from your knees to your waist. The rise accelerated. The Titanic is sinking bow first. The front of the ship, where the iceberg tore open 5 of the 6 watertight compartments, is submerging faster than the stern. The corridor where you're standing has an angle now. Subtle, but real. The floor tilts slightly toward the bow. Your feet are completely numb. You're aware you have feet, but not as functional parts of your body. Hypothermia progresses from extremity to extremity. Hands, feet, then arms, legs, then torso, then organs. Your body is prioritizing the core, the heart, the lungs. Extremities are expendable in the organism's survival logic. The child closest to you is in the arms of a woman you don't know. The woman is standing in water at her waist and holding the child up above it. The child is silent. Not because it's calm, because it's past the point of crying. That silence is harder to hear than any sound. You think about the trunk. The trunk with your things is in your cabin. You know there's no going back for it. You've known that for 20 minutes. But you still think about it. It was what was material in your life, condensed into a wooden trunk with iron hinges. Now in a flooded room 3 corridors back. The clothes, the documents, the address written on folded paper in the inner pocket of a jacket that will never dry. The Titanic inquiry, conducted in both the United States and the United Kingdom in the months following the disaster, found that class. Separation policies hampered the evacuation of third class in ways that were not accidental but systemic. KOI. The gates existed by regulation. American immigration laws required shipping companies to maintain class separation to facilitate sanitary inspections of third-class passengers at ports. Crew members who kept the gates closed weren't necessarily being cruel, they were following protocol. The problem is that the protocol never anticipated the sinking. Captain Smith did not issue a clear, explicit, general evacuation command for third class. Communication passed down the hierarchy in a fragmented, incomplete way. By the time it reached E-deck, it was distorted, incomplete, or hadn't arrived at all. The water is at your chest. You can no longer feel anything from the waist down, not as pain, but as absence. The progression of severe hypothermia includes a sensation that emergency physicians describe as feeling warm, when in reality, the body has reached a critical point of heat loss and is shutting down peripheral functions. Some hypothermia survivors describe a strange sense of well-being in the most severe moments. The body lying to itself, you look up, the ceiling of the corridor is 2 feet above your head. The water will get there. You do the calculation. You're going to need air above the waterline. There is no air above the waterline in this corridor. The gate is still closed. A woman near you is praying in a language you don't understand, Polish or Yiddish or Lithuanian. Third class gathered so many languages that communication was frequently by gesture. You understand her anyway, not the words. What's behind them? In the post-disaster investigations, surviving witnesses from third class described specific scenes. Gates being opened by a single crew member acting on their own initiative, without orders from above. Groups who followed older passengers who knew the ship's layout from previous crossings, people who climbed along the ship's exterior anchor rigging as the vessel pitched sharply. Every survival story was a story of accidental opportunity and fast decision. Those who didn't survive left no accounts. Their records were reconstructed retroactively by those who survived alongside them, by those who saw them last, by boarding documents that confirmed who boarded and who never disembarked. The water is at your chin. You're on the tips of your toes. The corridor is 6 feet tall, and you are inches from the ceiling. The air above the waterline in this enclosed space is enough for a few minutes of breathing before it too gets compressed by the incoming water. Around you, some people are swimming toward the gate. Some are hitting the bars with whatever they have. A key, a shoe heel, an open hand. The metal doesn't respond. You were going to America to change your life. You had an address in a coat pocket. You had savings strapped to your body. You had a name that someone on the other side of the Atlantic was waiting to hear. The Titanic took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink completely after impact. During that time, lifeboats were being lowered with capacity for 2,480 people. They left with fewer than 700 because first and second class passengers didn't want to board while the ship was still partially upright. Some boats left less than half full, cripped, while boats half empty descended from the boat deck 6 floors above. You were waiting for an iron gate to open. 1,519 people died that morning. The third-class number was disproportionately high. 35 years later, the sinking of the Titanic would still be cited in debates about equal access to emergency procedures in public transportation. Regulations were changed. Evacuation routes became mandatory and accessible to all passengers regardless of class. Too late for you, but not for those who came after. The water covers the ceiling of the corridor. The air in this space is gone. What happens in the next seconds is what physiology calls drowning, not death itself, but the physical process of oxygen deprivation. Panic comes first, then the involuntary attempt to breathe. Then, after a period, the mind registers as very long, but the clock registers as seconds. Loss of consciousness, what researchers of drowning have documented, and this comes from accounts of drowning survivors who were resuscitated, is that there is a moment of unusual clarity before consciousness is lost. A final organization of thought, a final image, a final conscious presence in the world. The water is at your knees. It was. If this video locked you behind an iron gate with the water rising, subscribe. We tell you what happened from the inside, not from up on the boat deck.